Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Preptober 2023. We are talking about how to outline your novel tonight. This is my favorite part. Well, one of my favorite parts. Outlining to me feels like writing. Now, I know there are a lot of non-plotters out there, but plotting is the only way that I figured out how to get through NaNoWriMo. The first few times I did NaNoWriMo, I didn't plot, and so I didn't win. Hey Deb, how are you doing? I see Deb's in the house, Mazel71's in the house. Say what's up in the comments and how you're doing with your story. If you were with us for the last session, which was connecting your plot and character and world, I hope that your story's been sitting in your mind and maybe you've been doing more work on it, maybe not. But yeah, we're gonna get to the outline and get to the first pass. Like, I don't expect everyone or anyone will get a full outline in this time, but like we're starting the process. Deb said she had to take the pups out for the last walk. Yes, I have the kittens. Well, they're not in here right now. And I say kittens even though I have a 13-year-old cat and a 4-year-old cat, but they'll always be kittens to me. But yeah, it's better not to have to walk them. I hope that everyone had a good day and is having a good week, getting over the hump for hump day. There are some resources that are linked in the description box that we'll be going through. And I'm going to be referring back to the story development workbook that I was working on in the last video. Because the notes are in there and kind of building on that, like every stage builds on every other stage. And that's how we do it. That's how the writing happens. So how many of y'all are plotters and how many have been pantsers in the past, I guess, because hopefully you wouldn't be here if you were committed to pantsing your NaNoWriMo novel. Like, if you are, that's wonderful. Good luck to you. But I don't really have anything to help you with that. But yeah, I didn't understand plotting for a long time, and learning it helped a lot. So hey Laura, how are you doing? So yeah, Mazel is a pantser hoping for a tiny bit of structure. That is awesome. In between. I honestly am in between. I am a plantser, however you want to call it. I call myself a plotter though because I can't do it without the plot, but I definitely never stick to any plot that I've ever written all the way. Deb's a former pantser. That novel lives in a drawer. Yeah, like my pantsed books, the ones I completely pantsed, didn't finish, never saw the light of day. One day I'm hoping I will get to them eventually. I'm hoping like extend the human life long enough for me to write all of the books that I want to write and go back to the ones that what do they call it? The trunked novels. Neglectful plotter, too much of a plotter. Okay, awesome. Some plotters in the house. So yeah, this is just how I go about starting the plot, and hopefully you can take something from this, add it to your system. Not everything that I do is not going to work for everybody, so that is obviously a given, and just trying to share. So I'm going to start with, let's see, with the story planner spreadsheet that I linked to in the description. So you just make a copy of that in your own version of Google Drive, and let's share that and get started. Okay, so this has several tabs. This is based on what I use. I actually, over time, I add more and more tabs to things and I customize it. So this is a good jumping off point, and it has a number of tabs that we can take a look at as we're starting. So plotting has to involve the characters. And so I generally, it depends, sometimes I'll start with the character, sometimes I'll start with the actual one of the plotting systems. So just to step through this worksheet or spreadsheet really quickly, the first tab is called character arcs, and it goes through a bunch of character questions, internal and external. And these are things that I've sort of just cobbled together from various sources, and there's columns for each character. I generally do the main characters, the protagonists, definitely anyone who has a POV character, antagonist, and then I don't have to do everything for every character, but the main ones. And then sometimes when I get stuck, it's because I don't know the answers to these questions. So we talked about some of the stuff in the last video, but this is another way to drill down into your characters and start creating their arc. Hey, Chelsea, welcome. Glad to have you here. The next tab in the spreadsheet that is linked is conflicts. And this is another way of approaching character arcs. So sometimes you'll see I have to do things multiple times in multiple ways and look at it differently with slightly tweaked versions of the same information. And that just helps me approach it from a different way. You know how they say when you get stuck on a manuscript, or sometimes when you go to the next draft, look at it in a different font, print it out, look at it in a different medium. You're trying to create space however you can. If you can't take time off, and sometimes taking time off is really a good idea, but sometimes it's just doing the same thing differently. So in this spreadsheet, we have a character. There's a concept coined by an author named Damon Swade about giving characters verbs, which I find helpful sometimes. So what is the verb of this character? What are they always trying to do? Like some characters are always agitating. Some characters are always creating peace. It's not really a verb, but there's, if you can choose a verb. I'm trying to remember some of my stories where I have characters that are, I cannot remember anything, but like agitating is one good way. They're kind of a needler, or creating peace. If that was a verb, there's a verb that means that. The theme of the character, I use that less often, but internal desire, internal conflict lie, their plan, lesson they have to learn, which is the same as on the other sheet. Some of these are basically the same. They're just different ways of saying the same thing. And the archetype, which is that if there's a positive change, a negative change, or a flat arc. So this is just, I tend to use this one later in the process. It's not as helpful in the upfront planning, but it's in here, so you can check it out if you'd like to. This is from, I think it's from Dramatica. So if I know where I got it from, I link it, because I'm always collecting resources from different places, from articles and books and things like that. I can put some more space here. So, you can go through these. These are just different ways of constructing what happens. And I like color coding things. Sometimes the colors don't make sense, but they make it more interesting to look at. Now, what I really use and what we're going to do tonight is Save the Cat, which I talked about before, and this is really foundational for me. I generally start with Save the Cat. And the other thing I start with is this 7-point plot structure. This is this worksheet. I gave it credit at the bottom. An author named Belinda Crawford had the original version, and I kind of added on to hers and added character stuff to it. So we're not going to get through all of this, but tonight we might have to do this in 2 parts. I have to see how far I get and how we're doing. We're going to check in and see how things are going. So I think starting with the character arc makes a lot of sense. So the point is to get to this high level overview, the big picture view of the story. And then from that, I drill down. So the outlining process is really, the way I do it is big to small, is like the overarching, where are we going? What are the main points along the way? And then over time, getting, deeper and deeper into that, expanding it more and more until by the time I'm ready to write, I have a detailed outline and a written synopsis where the outline is in paragraphs. And each paragraph essentially corresponds to a scene that I'm going to write. And then I know each day I try to do either 1 or 2 scenes a day when I'm writing. And that is the big picture overview of how I approach most of the books that I write. So that is what we're going to talk about. All right, so this character sheet, it starts with the internal goals. What does the character want to attain, or to prove? And yeah, this is like internal journey type of stuff. There's other, I didn't put every spreadsheet that I use in here because it's overwhelming. I use a lot of spreadsheets from a lot of different places. So if you're familiar with Michael Haig, let me make sure I can spell it. Oops. spell his name right. Let me do that over. Well, actually, I can do it over here. It's fine. Michael Haig. Michael Haig is the story guy. He does story mastery. And so he has this internal character arc system that sometimes I use for this. But this is got some similar things in it. Another, I was talking about KM Weiland. I made a link in the description of recommended craft books, and hers is one of them. So let me show you. I can't remember if this is backwards or not. Okay, so Structuring Your Novel by KM Weiland is a good one. And also Creating Character Arcs. This may not be on the list because I couldn't find it on Bookshop, but it's available on Amazon. And a lot of my character arc stuff comes from this book. And then also the structure and outlining. She also has a book called Outlining Your Novel, which is smaller. I think this one is more comprehensive, but I have all of them and I look at them all sometimes. So the other one I mentioned, which is really super foundational, Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. And that is on the list that I linked to in the recommended craft books. So those are kind of my go-tos. Plus, there's one more, which is really tiny. It's really thin. This is Write Your Novel from the Middle, James Scott Bell, and it's heavily highlighted, heavily bookmarked for me. It's very tiny, and I go to that a lot just because I reread the same part over and over again to get it in my head. All right, so we will start with character. I still don't have names. I'm going to do a whole thing on names. I'm purposely not naming her, and I have hero, but it is unlikely that you are in the same position. I just don't want to commit yet. Sometimes when I commit to a name without knowing other things, like I choose the name, if it doesn't come to me automatically, I choose it based on the world or the arc or the meaning or the vibe. And I haven't gotten there yet with this character, so she is nameless. Question: do you read the craft book first and then apply the info, or do you try to implement it as you read it? I implement it first, and well, I kind of go alongside. So these are books I've read before, but initially my process is to give it a shot myself, and when I get stuck, go to a craft book and try to figure out where I went wrong, and then re-engineer the process. And then after I've incorporated the information, then I kind of go and do it alongside. So when I pick up a new craft book and it's something new I want to try, then usually it's in between books because I'm not trying to. Usually I'm on deadline, so trying out some new craft thing is something I need more time for and not to be in a deadline for. And so, yeah, once I've actually read the book, which is hopefully helps me get unstuck from a project, the next time I will do it alongside. And another question: what part did you reread in James Scott Bell's book? Okay, so this Write Your Novel from the Middle talks about basically 3 turning points. One of them is the midpoint, and there's the first pillar and the second pillar. The part I read the most is the part on the pillars. So it's chapter 4 in here. It's really the midpoint. Like there's a doorway of no return he talks about, which is the end of Act 1. And then you have got the midpoint in the middle of the book, ideally, and then the second pillar. But honestly, yeah, the one I read the very most is chapter 5, the magical midpoint moment. And it's highlighted. It's you can't see that, but it's underlined, and I just needed to refresh it. It's only a few pages because for me, I struggle with the midpoint. And so that's probably why I need to reread this, like just about every book I go through. And clarifying the midpoint can be super helpful. And a lot of times I think I know what it is, and then I get confused, and then I check again, and it's usually what I thought it was, but sometimes I need to change it. So it's just that few pages that are really the point of the book is understanding the midpoint and utilizing it. And so I don't actually use the approach. Like his approach is actually start your plotting from the middle, from the midpoint. I personally don't find that helpful. I like to start from the beginning and go to the end, but I really do appreciate everything in the book. And when I get stuck in the middle, it's maybe I should actually just follow the advice. But like, there's so much craft advice out there, and I read a lot of it and incorporate it into my process in the way that makes more sense to me. And sometimes that means not doing what they say. So my heroine, let's see if this will go back and forth. Actually, all right, yeah, I'll just have to go. I don't think I can show them both at the same time because they're in different windows. There's a whole technical process. But okay, what does she want? And what does she need? So let me go through the questions first and we can kind of break it down. So the internal, what she wants to do, attain or prove, why they need to prove or attain this thing, what stands in the way, the consequences. This is external, and their solution for filling their need, and the story question. The story question is, will they achieve this goal? And then the gut level need, this is the internal stuff. So this is the stuff that sometimes they consciously know that they need this thing. The motivation for the internal, what in the past created this need, why can't they have what they need, a wound, the traumatic past experience that created the lie, which is the disempowering false belief, or the sacred flaw. And the sacred flaw is from another book that I like to use too. And the fear that resulted from the wound and drives the behavior, drives the lie. Then I added, what do they love? What do they hate? What do they dream about? Do they have any secrets? And then the lesson. What do they need to learn to become the person who can have this need fulfilled? So it's like the internal story question. So let's see. Now, I know that I'm not going to be able to answer all of these questions right now. That's why it's an iterative process. That's why I answer what I know, what I feel good about, and I leave the gaps. And then I go to the plot and do the same thing, answer what I know, what I understand, what I feel good about, and then kind of go back and forth. And that helps me weave it together and connect everything together to make sure that we're building a house, we're making a brick wall, and you have to have the foundation, and the bricks sort of lay together, and then they form the base of the other ones, and you can't I can't move forward until each layer is done, and then there's like a layer of character and a layer of plot and a layer of character and a layer of plot. So that is the approach that I take. um so I think I understand the external. But actually, I feel like I want to start with the plot and then come back to this. So, either choosing Save the Cat, the 7-point plot is actually where I like to start because it's in order. There's a specific order that you'll see in the spreadsheet. You actually start at the end. So, let's see. Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Planter's in the house. So we start at the end, at the climax. Everything leads to this moment. Then we move back up, and I'm just doing this column B here, the section here, the before picture, the opposite of the resolution. And the third thing we do is the midpoint, which is why I don't start there, because I like this method where you start with the point at which the characters begin moving from one state to the other, from reaction to action. Then you go back up to turning point 1, which introduces the conflict, bridges the gap between the hook and the midpoint. The character's world changes, new people, new secrets, etc. Then we skip down to 5, which is the second to the last thing, which bridges the gap between the midpoint and the resolution. You obtain the last thing needed to reach the resolution. The example is use the Force Luke. 6, we go back and forth. So we go back to the beginning and make sure that's connected. Where something bad happens, you apply pressure, forcing the characters to act, often used to introduce the villain. And then 7, something even worse happens, more pressure, all is lost. All right. Shout out if you are completely lost, but this is the basic structure. So we have this comes from author Dan Wells, who has this 7-point plot structure that this spreadsheet was based on. And Deb asks, going to the characters again, for paranormal romance, would I need to know the answers for both the female and the male characters? And I would say yes. I would say any POV character, you would want to have at least a glancing familiarity with the stuff in the character arcs section. But yeah, For some reason, I'm having resistance to starting with the characters right now, and I'm just gonna follow that energy and take a shot at this, main plot. So these columns here are separated into the action plot and the romance, because 'cause I'm generally writing a romance. And then I have a whole 'nother section which is similar for character, and we're not gonna deal with that right now. So I'll just make this bigger so we can see. And in my story, so to review, the story that I am working on is about a group of warriors who hire this woman to be the housekeeper of their house. They live outside of a small town. They're supernatural warriors. They're keeping this a secret. The existence of the supernatural is a secret from the world. And they're trying to keep it also a secret from their housekeeper. I know that my heroine really wants to have a better life. She's lonely. She longs for connection and purpose. I know that my hero is this warrior who longs to be a librarian. He's tired of fighting, but he's been created, magically engineered to be a warrior. Their antagonists are sort of the world, because they have to keep, at least the warriors and the supernatural creatures have to keep the secret of their existence. Um, there's these demon creatures who are trying to invade, and the warriors are protecting us from them. The heroine has a secret identity. And let's see. And I'm trying to make this a cozy romantasy. So the goals that I decided before. Okay, let me go to the log line that I'm working with. And present this really quickly. So we're all on the same page, or at least I'm on the same page. So this lonely woman and a supernatural warrior must protect their small town from an invasion of demons before the town is destroyed, all while keeping the people oblivious of the existence of the supernatural world. All right, that is what I'm trying to do. So everything, it encapsulates everything that I'm working on here. I will go back to the other. I should have put these in the same tab. It would have been easier, but okay. So the after picture in this action plot of the story, and I can sort of do the romance alongside it because it's going to be similar. Like at the end of the romance, that might be easier to start with. The end of the romance, everything leads to the point where my hero and heroine are in love. So characters are in love. We start at the opposite of that. They are strangers. This is like the most basic version of it. The before picture, normal world. There's different ways to describe this in different plotting systems. So the third step in this particular system is to figure out the midpoint. So the point at which the characters begin moving from one state to the other. Now, the romance plot line depends on the romance arc, the romance beats, basically. So in the middle of a romance, and this is going to be, this is where knowing your genre really makes a difference, and understanding the beats. So when I'm writing a romance, I usually refer to Gwen Hayes's Romancing the Beat, and that's probably a good thing to refer to now, so that I make sure that at least when I'm initially constructing everything, I understand what I'm doing. If you're writing a mystery, there's certain beats and certain plot points that you have to have in a mystery, and certain things that readers are going to expect in a mystery. So I have the midpoint of a romance is often there's sex at the midpoint. Everything seems within reach. They know each other. They have started the path towards the relationship, but the midpoint is a big point of change. Now, in the James Scott Bell world, going back to write your novel from the middle, that the middle is a mirror moment where they have to kind of look in the mirror and understand the obstacles that are against them. So it sort of goes hand in hand with the point at which the characters begin moving from one state to the other, from reaction to action. And I'm thinking that in this romance, it is might be a good time for a secret to come out. So you want some kind of exciting thing to happen at the midpoint. I don't know if this book, like how much sex this book is going to have. It's not going to be, super heated, but if it is a romance, my romance novels do have are open door, but I generally, and I don't remember if this is true or not, in a book with a lot more plot, like especially a paranormal or a fantasy, it's usually that I'm not following that kind of rule at sex at 50%, that way a lot of romance writers do it. So I don't think that's going to make sense in this story at all. So I'm going to say, and just throw this out there because this is the first pass and it probably will change, but this is when she discovers the secret. So I'm going to say the heroine discovers the existence of supernatural creatures. And this might be late, but I'm going to work with this and see how it flows. She discovers basically that her bosses are supernatural warriors and that she's been living with them this whole time. That is part of the romance. Let's put that in the action plot too, because it has less to do with him. Like I guess she discovers that he is, the hero is supernatural. Also, these points may or may not match up. So if you have different subplots, you can add different new columns for subplots on this kind of spreadsheet. And so the midpoint of your subplot could be a completely different part of the story. It might be off screen. Um, if you're doing something bigger and more epic, they're not always going to match up. But each plot line will have these sections. It's just that sometimes things happen off screen because you don't have enough page time to do every single subplot, have every single turning point on the page. So if at the end of the story, the resolution in the main action plot is that our warriors have defeated the threat against the town and sent the demons back to their world or their dimension or wherever they're coming from. That's the end. The beginning, the before picture, which is the opposite of the resolution, is whether or not it's on the page or not, there is a problem. A story starts with a problem even before the inciting incident. So there is a situational problem where, in general, demons are threatening the town. We might not see an attack at the very beginning of the book, but that's the before picture. The other part of it is at the resolution that our heroine has become a part of this family, let's say, this found family, and is accepted by them. This is part of our resolution. So at the beginning, the opposite of that is that the heroine is new, unknown to the warrior family. That's part of what's going to change. That's part of the story question too. So this allows me to sort of answer one of the questions on the character sheet. If we are starting with a character who is lonely and longing for connection and longing for purpose, by the end of the story, in the resolution, she's achieved that. So she's accepted by them and has found her purpose. We can even say that. She's also discovered that she is a magical creature. And so she starts ignorant of that. Her abilities and history, I guess. She doesn't know who she is. She was adopted and raised as human, and her powers have never kicked in. So yeah, all of this sort of culminates in her discovery of the existence of supernatural creatures. This would align well with a major attack. So how was she discovering this? There's many ways that could happen, but one really kind of interesting, exciting way for this particular story would be there is an attack. She witnesses it. They can't hide it anymore. So up until this point, I feel like everyone's been hiding things from her. She's been slowly discovering things, but at the midpoint, things change. If we think about a mirror moment, like what James Scott Bell says, it's where the hero, you know, realizes the strength of the forces arrayed against them. So the antagonists in this particular part of the story would be these demons, and an attack is how a character could be like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. In a quieter story, it may be something more internal, like, oh, I have to change. I'm facing some sort of professional death, in a straight up romance. It could be, are we right for each other? That sort of midpoint situation. But here I'm going to do a demon attack. And these are connected. So discovers the existence, I guess, due to a demon attack. Let's make that make sense. So that is number 3. 4, go back up to the turning point. Now, these people, different plotting systems call things different names. So the turning point is, it's green because it's kind of the end of Act 1. I've tried to color code the Act 3 is this purplish or bluish, I guess. And then Act 3 is the more purple. So let's call this blue. Turning point, end of Act 1. A lot of things happen in Act 1. We can, if we just really quickly compare this to the Save the Cat method, which, has more points. I think it has 11, whereas this is 7. We have the opening image, setup, the catalyst, the debate, and then we break into Act 2. They're sort of analogous to each other. Like, they're different, but if you can overlay them on top of each other, and they will match up in certain ways. But one of the reasons I start with 7 is because 7 is less than 11. And these are fewer plot points to figure out in my first pass. Save the Cat often asks too much of me for right now to know all of those things. So I'd rather, you can start with 3. You can just start with what's the beginning, what's the middle, what's the end, and then expand it from there. So in point 4, it says introduces the conflict, bridges the gap between the hook, where, we know nothing. She's entering this strange house. She's had this new job, wants to do her best, and the resolution. The hook and the midpoint. And in the midpoint, we're having this invasion, this attack by these demons. So the world changes, new people, new secrets. So I think in the very beginning, we're going to start like as she's driving up, and she's being introduced to everything. So there has to be some kind of conflict. And in the romance, this could be the meet cute. I think that they're strangers. If they meet and, whoops. If they meet and, let's say, I'm going to do like a Grumpy Sunshine. I think I'm kind of drawn to that. Grumpy warrior wants to be a librarian. Sunshiny housekeeper who is lonely but always tries to look on the bright side. Could be a cliche, but Grumpy Sunshine is a trope and not a cliche if you do it right. So I like that. So maybe at the turning point, the characters meet. The 2 main characters meet. And they clash in some way. He's rude to her because he knows he has to keep the secret, and they're all on their guard, and she's just nice and friendly and is really trying to go places she shouldn't go, and he barks at her. So they meet and clash in some way. Hero is rude to heroine. That is a romance plot line. Turning point, I believe. For the action plot, now that if we're thinking about it in two ways, the action plot or the main external plot has to do with the secrets, the town, her discovery. Like if the point of it is to get to a place where she knows about herself and she is able to help solve the problem of this demon invasion, help the warriors in some way, which is why they brought her in the first place. I think they bring her in, A, to protect her because whoever she is, the creature that she is imperiled. Maybe that's why she was stolen from her family in the first place. And the power that she has is unique. And so I want that to be the motivation. And so the turning point, the world changes. So we're leaving the normal world, and this is actually like the inciting incident. Um, sorry, I keep clicking the wrong thing. Okay, so she begins work at the mansion. Let's call it a mansion at the edge of town. Unusual things are happening that she doesn't understand. And she knows things are being hidden from her. She suspects things are being hidden from her. We introduce the characters, these new people, new secrets that fits right in because I want a little vibe of like a tiny gothic vibe of like, why are these doors all locked? Why is no one telling me anything? Why can't I go here? Why can't I do this? I'm supposed to be the housekeeper. I'm supposed to be cleaning the whole house, but there's a whole wing that I can't go into. Something like that is going to be happening. If we go to number, let's see, that's 4, we go to 5, which is at the end. All right. It bridges the gap between the midpoint and the resolution. So here, the midpoint, again, is this attack. The resolution is she either discovers or masters her power in order to help them get to this resolution. So heroine discovers or masters her power. So Deb asks, inciting incident always trips me up. Is it something that the main character does or something that happens to her or him? The inciting incident, it's either a cause or a coincidence. So it is either one. A lot of times I was in a workshop where someone described it as a choice the character makes. So if something happens to them, how do they react to it? It's the choice that they make to ignore it, you know, or to dive into it. And that's why you have in either Save the Cat or Hero's Journey the refusal of the call. But the call happens, and a lot of times it is external. It's like something new comes into the life of the character. How is today different than yesterday? Why does the story start today and not yesterday? But it could be a choice that they make. So it's kind of both. It's like when something happens, they choose to go on this adventure or they're forced onto it, but they keep walking. You know what I mean? But I think of the inciting incident as this new thing that happened. I think I have a note card. I have a stack of note cards about story stuff that helps me remember what things are. So yeah, choice, cause, or coincidence. It could be a coincidence that happens to them. It could be something that they've done that then they are also reacting to. Does that help? Does that make sense? Because it's really about forces exerting tension and conflict on your character, right? So everything was fine. Normal world is fine. I can save the cat. Whoops. You introduce things, and then there's a catalyst, which is the inciting incident. It forces them into the premise, but it's their choice. It's still a choice of theirs to go. So your main character's BFF is murdered, and your main character chooses to save / kidnap her friend's son. Now they have to go on their own. Absolutely, that's definitely the inciting incident. So, what is it? The murder? Or is it the choice to kidnap the son? That's semantics. Like, I think that different plotting systems can call it different things, but that whole scenario is the inciting incident. It's the thing that begins the book. Without it, the book doesn't happen. The adventure doesn't happen. So yeah, there's ways in which you can call it the murder or call it the kidnapping, but the kidnapping wouldn't have happened without the murder, right? So at that point, you get to choose what you call your inciting incident, but you definitely have one. Is there a name for the kind of romance where the male lead is popular and the female lead has no clue that he's been supporting and loving her? That's a good question. Is there a name for that? I'm thinking it's sort of a trope, like the pining hero almost. Is he pining? I don't know if there's a name for that. Oblivious heroine. There's kind of I think I've heard that in terms of the name of the trope, but if someone knows the answer to this, let us know because I can't think of a name like a cute name like Grumpy Sunshine or Enemies to Lovers or anything like that, but then maybe there is. I like that. I like that trope though. I love that where the it's like, oh, the nerd is tutoring the quarterback of the football team and has no idea that he has a crush on her, and yeah, that's like one of my favorite things. And yes, it is really easy to overthink this stuff. It is we all intuitively, understand story from reading it so much and from watching movies, and sometimes putting it into words can be complicated, but that's why I do it in sort of bursts and passes, and I don't like as much as I love spreadsheets and I do them and they help to organize me, if I can't figure out exactly what the midpoint is, like I'm in the middle of writing a draft right now. And I was talking to my friend and like, this may or may not be the all is lost moment. I'm not sure, but I feel like I know what I'm doing, so it's fine. Or like it's gonna be in there and I will figure it out at some point. Deb recommends the romance trope thesaurus. Um, I don't have that yet, but I know that came out, and I should definitely get a copy of that because that does look super helpful. Thank you. So I'm thinking of for this turning point, it's the moment. It's in Act 3, so this is part of our finale. If at the end she has to use her abilities and help them somehow, have her abilities help her somehow, then I think that she has to discover it and or master her powers at this point. The other part of it, we're kind of leaving out the hero, but I think that for this stage, this makes sense to me. All right, that's 5. Go back up to 6. Something bad happens after she starts working there. Used to introduce the villain, apply pressure. Um, I think that some representative of the bad guy discovers that she's there and knows what she is and somehow she's endangered. So let's say a bad guy discovers our heroine and knows what she is, plans to use her abilities for their own purposes. That would be a cause for the attack that happens in the midpoint. The actual target is her, and maybe she figures that out at this point. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe that's more revelation to come. And then 7, something even worse happens, our all is lost. So let's say at the midpoint, there's an attack that is fended off. Warriors, fend off attack. All is lost. And something that I discovered in the previous work on developing the story and the characters was the town is going to be imperiled. That's part of the vibe that I want for the story. So even worse, something even worse happens that gets us to the all is lost, where all is lost. It's the dark night of the soul, or it kind of overlays on top of that if you're familiar with the hero's journey. They come back. So there's another attack. And you'll see these are just plot points. There's still a lot of things happening in between these plot points, but these are the major turns that the story is going to have. another attack on the town this time. And maybe the heroine is in the town, that's why they attack it. But it's worse because not just one person is at risk, but this whole town of unsuspecting humans who know nothing about this world and can't know anything about it and are supposed to be being protected by our warriors who live outside of the town. And it's attacked. So the warriors have to both protect the town and keep the secret or clean it up somehow if the secret gets out. Whoops. Okay. So I've got a basic outline of the external plot. Still need to fill in some of the gaps in the romance, like why, what else is keeping them apart? Is there anything else keeping them apart? And I do have some extra additional information now that I can take to my character arcs worksheet and fill some of that in. So we're talking about external. Our hero, he needs to protect from the demons. Everyone. Our heroine, her external goal at the beginning is to do a good job, like, kick ass at her new job. And we talked about motivation for this, the obstacles that stand in the way. I'm going to go to obstacles. Just, I think motivation, we can work on that. I have to figure out exactly the points, but I know she wants to have this new job so she can save up money and maybe do something else. The obstacles are the secrets. Also falling in love, falling for her boss or one of her bosses. It's not great all the time. Stakes, these are kind of smaller stakes here, but I would also want to add in the extra goal. So her first goal is to do this. Her next goal, I'm gonna actually, there's a way that I can do this. Oh, I can't do it in sheets. All right, I'll just do it this way. Kick-ass at her new job. Also discover what everyone is hiding. That is her secondary goal. There's a thing where you wrap it. Here it goes. Oh, no wonder. I put it in the wrong place. At any rate, hopefully you see what I'm doing here. Oh, later. The stakes of not discovering what everyone is hiding. This is another thing from Write Your Novel from the Middle by James Scott Bell. He talks about the stakes are always death. So there's 3 types of stakes. There's professional, psychological, and physical. Your psychological death is usually for romances where, saying it's death is obviously like a little bit dramatic, but like if you don't fall in love with this person, you're going to die psychologically. Professional death is often detectives. If the detective doesn't solve the case professionally, it's a death of sorts. And then there's the physical life and death stakes. So if your goal is to discover what people are hiding, if you know there's a secret and you feel unsettled, then the stakes of that are just, can you continue in this when you're feeling so unsettled? She likes this job. It's much better than her last job. It is cushier and she's going to be able to save up money and meet this financial goal. But if she can't work here because she's uncomfortable and there's just this kind of creepy and spooky, then that is the stake. So losing the job and her chance at a future, at the future she wants, which the job would provide. And so her solution to the goal of discovering what everybody is hiding is to snoop and sneak around and investigate. Story question for her: will she discover secret? And the story question is like, by the end of the story, we have answered the question. We know the story is over when we've answered this question. For him, it might be, will he, with his external goal of protection and being the warrior, will he be able to protect the town and the heroine from the beans? Now, internal gut level need is connection for her, as she's, the motivation is the loneliness of being an orphan and, kind of stuck in a dead end job with maybe some reason that she doesn't have a lot of friends, or, she seems to be I'm thinking of her as a friendly, bubbly person, but something is going on there that I probably have to dive into a little bit more. And also, it could just be however these powers of hers have been like bound or kept secret. That could also be a reason why she's has a problem connecting with other people. So why can't she have what she wants? Why can't she have this connection? Yeah, I think there's got to be something she doesn't understand. So her powers, or the hiding of her powers, manifests in a way that makes it difficult for her to connect. Hidden powers somehow, and I would probably just type this in all caps so I know that I have to figure out how make it hard for her to connect. Um, I'd have to figure out a wound or a traumatic experience. I'm not sure about that. And yeah, the lie and the fear is like character development stuff that I really have to dive into. And I think we'll talk about that in a future video because off the top of my head, I'm not sure. And yeah, the answer to these questions, these other things are the internal stuff. Really, for me, it takes a lot of work. I use things like Enneagrams and other personality tests to dive deeper into that kind of stuff. But I feel like I have a good start, and I'll go ahead and fix this on her external journey. I think still have to work on his external journey. And as far as the plot points go, getting all seven, it gives me a good start toward the outline. This is basically how I would okay, transfer this probably and take another look at it, go point by point, and then see if I can stick it into our Save the Cat tab in the spreadsheet and get a little bit more detailed. So you see there's similar points, there are other plot points, but there's more of them here. And this helps me flesh it out and figure out the connective tissue between these 7 plot points. And then after Save the Cat, I would, go even deeper and flesh it out some more and try to figure out cause and effect. How do I get from A to B to C? So, how am I getting from, like, what does this look like? She's new, she enters this place, she has this new job, she starts work. What are the unusual things? Breaking it out more. How does that happen? And then, adding in the romance, obviously, figuring out all the rest of the plot points for that. You have introducing a bad guy. There's other tensions at play that within the warriors that I really want to dive into some more and figure out are there other subplots. Eh, who are these other characters and how do they relate? How are they causing my heroine problems? How are they causing the hero problems? And how are they maybe offering some solutions as well? And so, but yeah, I feel pretty good about having gotten actually all 7 because sometimes I don't. Not in the first pass. Like it often looks like this romance one. There's a big gap here. Something's gonna happen, and then some more stuff's gonna happen, and then they're gonna be fall in love, and it'll be great. It's gonna be a happy ending. So yeah, this is the bigger picture of the plot. Let me know if you have any questions about this, if it makes sense, if you're confused, if you're lost. The numbers are out of order, so I'll put this up. Laura asks about why the numbers are out of order. The numbers are out of order. It's a suggested order of how to approach it. So if you start at the end, if you start with where the resolution is, where everything ends up, and then you go to the beginning, which is the opposite, it I find it helpful. It might not be helpful for you. Like if it doesn't make sense to do it that way, then feel free to skip it. But if if I know where I'm going, like I know where I'm driving to, this is the point where I can say, okay, well, what's the opposite of this? If the end of the book and the thing that I want the reader to walk away with is that we've defeated these demons, we've people in love, the heroine is accepted, then I know that the beginning has to be the opposite of that, and that's why it's number 2. And then midpoint is number 3 because it's like it's halfway. It's the halfway point between the beginning and the end, and then you can fill in the details. So that is why it's suggested that you do it in that order. But like I said, it may not work for you. It may not make sense in your brain, and that is perfectly fine. And it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Yeah, I haven't thought a lot. Like the thinking I've done has been live on this video. So about who the characters are. I think that what I will do over the course of the next few days is kind of go back to the story development workbook that we did in the last video, because I had a lot of good stuff in there that is going to make this process easier, that I brainstormed there. So go back to your brainstorms about who these characters are. And I think maybe the next video, I was trying to decide what makes the most sense to do next. Do characters. I also want to talk about organization and story Bibles. And yeah, just like that might have to be first too. I don't know. If anyone has a suggestion, because I'm kind of going back and forth in the process, because some things happen concurrently, but would you like to hear about characters next, or organization and research and how to keep all of this organized next? Let me know in the comments, and we'll get to it. We'll get to both of them. It's just what's the order. But I'm glad you feel less intimidated, Deb. That is good to hear. And yeah, it's not going to come all together all at once. It's just impossible. I mean, I guess there for some people that might, superstars are going to just blurt out the story in one pass and then they're done. But it takes a while. And at first it's going to feel terrible. It's going to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what the story is. It's okay. Take a deep breath. We all feel that way. Got a lot of votes for characters next. Okay. I do have a video on my channel on a workshop that I did for the Author Tube Writing Conference on Story Bibles. So Dragon Maiden 84. I know that talks a lot about the organization that I will talk about. So it should be under lives, I think. It was one of the lives that I did. So check that out. But the characters have won the day. And so, yeah, we will talk about that on the next video on Monday, if you are coming live. But yeah, so I think I'll do characters next and then come back and do another outline pass and kind of show how this gets fleshed out into more detail and into something that approaches what you're going to need in order to figure out how you're going to attack the writing every day when we get to November. Cool? Sounds good. Any final thoughts or questions before we head off into the evening or the day, the rest of your day? I would suggest, doing a pass or two, filling this in, and then taking a break, taking a day off in between, filling the well. I'm going to go back and watch more Pushing Daisies. I'm working my way through the series and get inspiration from wherever it comes. And then I think that, like I said before in some other video or place, that, once your mind is on the story, you're going to notice things all around that are going to help you fill it out, help you know your characters better, help you know what they're going to do, what the obstacles are. Laura asks, where do we find the lives? Are on YouTube. So if you're on my YouTube channel and there's a place where it says like videos and it says live, I think if I go there now, I will see myself talking. So I can I will put a link to it in an email, the next reminder email. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. So I will hopefully see you in the next video. We're going live again next Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. And have a good rest of your week and weekend. Take care.